Admiral James Walker stood at the viewport of Earth's orbital command station, staring at the ragtag collection of vessels that now constituted humanity's last line of defense. The ships, if they could even be called that, drifted in awkward formation, a mismatched assembly of outdated military vessels, converted cargo haulers, and hastily armed civilian craft. 20 years of budget cuts had reduced Earth's once proud space fleet to little more than a symbolic force. "Sir, we've received another transmission from the Meridian Fleet," Lieutenant Tom Davis said, his voice tight with tension. "They're requesting visual confirmation of our defensive capabilities." Walker sighed. "Let them look. They'll see soon enough." The Admiral knew what the aliens would observe: a pathetic collection of ships cobbled together from whatever humanity could salvage. The newest vessel in their fleet was 15 years old, and most were pushing 30. Some had been pulled from orbital junkyards, their hulls still bearing the scars of previous battles or commercial service. 3 weeks ago, deep space monitoring stations had detected the approach of the Meridian Armada. First contact had been established shortly after, and the aliens' intentions became immediately clear. They weren't explorers or diplomats. They were conquerors who had already subjugated 12 other civilizations. "Admiral, the Joint Chiefs are waiting for your assessment," Davis said, offering a tablet displaying the faces of Earth's military leadership. "Generals, admirals," Walker began, his voice steady despite the desperation of their situation. "The Meridian Force consists of approximately 200 capital ships and at least 500 support vessels. Their technology appears to be at least 2 generations beyond our most advanced systems." "And our chances?" asked General Roberts, the lines in her face deepening. Walker didn't sugarcoat it. "With our current resources, virtually none. But I've initiated Protocol Scrapyard. We're retrofitting everything that can fly with whatever weapons we can mount." The silence that followed was deafening. Protocol Scrapyard was a theoretical last resort strategy, never meant to be implemented. A desperate plan to arm civilian vessels in case of total military collapse. "We've called in every retired engineer, every military contractor, even university professors with relevant expertise," Walker continued. "The civilian response has been remarkable. People are volunteering their private vessels, industrial equipment, even museum pieces. It won't be enough," Admiral Chen said, her voice flat. "No," Walker agreed, "but it's all we have." The meeting ended with grim nods. Earth had 1 month before the Meridian Fleet arrived in full force. 1 month to prepare a defense with ships held together by patch welds and prayers. 3 days later, the Meridian ambassador requested a face-to-face meeting. The alien vessel that docked with the command station was sleek and predatory, its hull a seamless expanse of some unknown metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Commander Vex of the Meridian Fleet stood nearly 7 feet tall, with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. His eyes, 3 of them, arranged in a triangle, assessed Walker with obvious disdain. "Admiral Walker," the translator unit rendered Vex's clicking speech into English, "I have reviewed your defensive capabilities." And Walker kept his expression neutral. The alien made a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. "You defend your world with garbage. Ships that should have been melted down decades ago. Vessels designed to haul cargo, not fight wars. Is this truly the best Earth can offer?" Walker felt his jaw tighten, but maintained his diplomatic posture. "We are a peaceful species, Commander. Our resources are directed toward exploration and commerce." "Peaceful species get consumed," Vex replied. "The Meridian Empire respects strength, not weakness. Your junk fleet is an insult to warfare itself." Behind Walker, he could sense his staff bristling at the alien's mockery, but he raised a hand slightly to maintain discipline. "Perhaps you would consider a diplomatic solution," Walker suggested. "Cultural exchange, trade agreements." "Here are our terms," Vex interrupted. "Immediate planetary surrender. Your people will serve as a labor force. Your resources belong to the Empire now. Resistance will result in the obliteration of your major population centers. The alien displayed a holographic map of Earth with 20 cities highlighted. Beginning with these, Walker studied the map, buying time to control his anger. The people of Earth will need time to consider your generous offer. Vex made that laughing sound again. Consider? There is nothing to consider. But I will grant you 1 week, as is customary before we add a new species to our collective. It will give us time to properly document your pitiful defenses for our historical records. The alien gestured toward the viewport where Earth's makeshift fleet hung in space. Perhaps you should rename that collection of scrap the Suicide Squadron. After the Meridians departed, Walker immediately called his chief engineer to the command center. Dr. Alex Morgan had been retired for 5 years when the crisis began, but no one knew Earth's military technology better. The gray-haired engineer had been working nonstop since being recalled to duty. "They're overconfident," Morgan said after Walker briefed him on the meeting. "Good. We can use that." "They have every reason to be confident, Alex. You've seen their ships, their weapons." Morgan nodded. "I have. And I'd also detected something interesting." He pulled up sensor readings on his tablet. "Their shield systems operate on a variable frequency modulation. It's why our standard weapons would be useless against them. And," a smile crossed Morgan's weathered face, "and every system has a weakness, James. Even theirs, especially if they don't think we're clever enough to find it." Walker leaned forward. "What do you need?" "Every radiation specialist you can find, and access to the old nuclear subs we mothballed in the Pacific." For the next 4 days, Earth's command station became the center of the most unconventional military planning session in human history. Morgan assembled a team that defied all military protocol. Civilian engineers, theoretical physicists, even video game designers noted for their unconventional problem-solving. "We can't match their technology," Morgan explained to the gathered team. "So we won't try. Instead, we'll use what they consider junk in ways they'd never expect." Old nuclear submarines were hurriedly converted into space carriers. Cargo ships had mining lasers repurposed as weapons. Museum pieces were pulled from display and rushed back into service. Every ship was modified in some way that defied conventional military doctrine. On the 5th day, a Meridian scout ship approached the growing Earth fleet for another inspection. Walker ordered all vessels to perform standard maneuvers, carefully hiding the true nature of their modifications. The Meridian transmission came shortly after. "Admiral Walker, our observers report that you are painting civilian vessels with military markings. Is this an attempt to inflate your numbers? Such deception is pointless." Walker allowed himself a small smile before responding. "Not deception, Commander Vex. Just making the best use of available resources." "Your best remains laughable," came the reply. "Our weapons officers have calculated that your entire fleet could be eliminated in under 15 minutes. Then perhaps you'll grant us a quick death," Walker responded, feigning resignation. The alien commander's final words before breaking communication were recorded and broadcast throughout Earth's fleet. "Death comes to all inferior species, Admiral. Yours will at least have the honor of being eliminated by the greatest armada in the galaxy, rather than your embarrassing collection of space junk." As the transmission ended, Walker turned to Morgan, who was reviewing final modification plans for the flagship. "Well, Doctor, will your theories hold up against their technology?" Morgan looked up, his eyes tired but determined. "Theory is about to become practice, Admiral. And if I'm right about their shield frequencies..." He didn't finish the sentence. Walker nodded and turned to face the viewport again, watching as more ships joined the growing human fleet. They weren't pretty. They weren't uniform. But they were humanity's only hope. "Project Patchwork is now officially active," he announced to the command center. "May our junk fleet prove worthier than they could possibly imagine." The converted cargo bay of the former mining vessel Resilient buzzed with activity as Dr. Alex Morgan hunched over a sprawling workbench. Around him, A dozen engineers and scientists worked frantically, their faces illuminated by holographic displays and welding sparks. The ship's cavernous interior had been transformed into an impromptu research lab, with cables snaking across the floor and equipment stacked in precarious towers. "Pass me the frequency modulator," Morgan called out, not looking up from the device he was dissecting. A captured Meridian communication relay that a stealth team had managed to recover from the debris of a previous alien encounter. Dr. Liz Reed, a quantum physicist who had been teaching undergraduates just 3 weeks ago, slid the tool across the table. "The radiation signature is unlike anything I've seen before," she said, pointing to the readings on her tablet. "It's almost as if their shields are designed to absorb energy rather than deflect it." Morgan finished her thought. "Exactly. But look at this pattern here." He highlighted a section of the data. Every 67 seconds, there's a micro fluctuation in the frequency. It's barely detectable, but it's consistent. Reed's eyes widened as she processed the implication. A reset cycle. That would mean, for approximately 0.3 seconds, their shields are vulnerable to a specific radiation band, Morgan said, a rare smile crossing his tired face. "The Meridians are so confident in their technology that they never bothered to fix this weakness. Why would they? No species they've encountered has ever noticed it, much less exploited it." The scientist's excitement was interrupted by the ship's intercom. "Dr. Morgan, Admiral Walker is requesting your presence on the command deck." The command center of the Asterisk, Resilient Asterisk, bore little resemblance to its former function as a mining vessel's bridge. Navigation systems had been ripped out and replaced with military-grade tactical displays. The ship's captain, a former mining engineer named Jack Foster, had volunteered his vessel within hours of Earth's call for civilian ships. "Tell me you have good news," Walker said as Morgan entered. The Admiral looked like he hadn't slept in days, which was probably true. Morgan set his tablet on the central console, bringing up a complex diagram. "We've found a weakness in their shield system. It's small, it's brief, but it's real. If we can hit them with concentrated bursts of a specific radiation frequency exactly when their shields reset, we can create holes in their defenses." Walker studied the diagram. "How big are these holes?" "Not big enough for conventional weapons," Morgan admitted, "but big enough for something smaller, like modified mining drones." Foster stepped forward, intrigued. "My ship was outfitted with over 200 excavation drones before it was decommissioned. They're designed to cut through asteroid rock." "Could they cut through Meridian hull material?" Walker asked. Morgan shrugged. "We don't know, but we've analyzed the samples from their communication relay. Their hull metal is impressive, but not invincible, with the right modifications to the drilling mechanisms." "How many ships in our fleet could be similarly equipped?" Walker asked, a plan already forming in his mind. "At least 30, Foster replied. "Most of the mining vessels we've brought in have compatible drone systems." Walker nodded slowly. "Dr. Morgan, I want those drones modified immediately. Captain Foster, gather the other mining vessel captains for a briefing in 2 hours." As Morgan turned to leave, Walker called after him. "What about the nuclear submarine conversions? Any progress there?" "Better than expected," Morgan replied. "The radiation shielding on those old subs is being reproposed to focus and direct the energy pulses we'll need to exploit the shield weakness. And the missiles, well, let's just say we've made some interesting modifications." For the next 3 days, the human fleet underwent a transformation that defied all conventional military doctrine. Retired naval officers found themselves commanding spaceships. Civilian engineers redesigned weapons systems on the fly. University professors calculated targeting algorithms for weapons that hadn't existed a week ago. In a storage bay aboard the command station, Walker convened what he called the Unconventional Warfare Committee, a group that included military tacticians, video game designers known for their strategic thinking, and even historians specializing in ancient guerrilla warfare. "The Meridians fight like a traditional military force," explained Colonel Diane Parks, a military historian. Their tactics are sophisticated but predictable. They rely on superior technology and overwhelming force, not creativity. They expect us to behave like every other species they conquered, added Tom Lee, a game designer whose strategic warfare simulations were legendary. They'll anticipate a centralized defense, probably concentrated around Earth or the Moon. They won't expect scattered, autonomous attack units. Walker paced the room, considering their input. So we don't give them what they expect. No formation. No conventional attack pattern. He stopped at the holographic display, showing Earth's mismatched fleet. We fight like junk. Sir, Parks looked confused. Junk doesn't have a pattern, Walker explained. It's random, unpredictable. Some pieces are valuable, others are decoys. That's what Project Patchwork will be, a strategy as cobbled together as our fleet itself. The unusual think tank spent the next 18 hours developing what would later be called the most unorthodox battle plan in human military history. Meanwhile, aboard the Resilient Asterisk, Morgan's team had successfully modified the first batch of mining drones. The small, maneuverable machines now carried specialized drilling equipment designed to penetrate meridian hull material, along with small but potent explosive charges. They're not pretty, Morgan told Walker during a demonstration, but they're deadly. Once they penetrate the hull, they'll deliver an electromagnetic pulse that should disable their systems from the inside. How many do we have ready? Walker asked. Almost 1,000, Morgan replied. And we're producing more every hour. The real challenge was creating the radiation pulse generators to open the shield gaps. We've installed them on 67 ships now. Walker nodded approvingly. And the nuclear option? Morgan's expression grew serious. Ready, but untested. We've converted the warheads from the submarines into what are essentially massive, dirty EMP bombs. If they detonate close enough to a Meridian ship when its shields are in reset cycle, total systems failure, Walker finished. If it works, Morgan cautioned, this is all theoretical. The Admiral placed a hand on the scientist's shoulder. Theory is all we have, Alex. And we're out of time. The tactical alert came just as the 5th day of preparation was ending. The Meridian fleet had accelerated their approach and would reach Earth in less than 24 hours, 2 days earlier than their ultimatum had specified. They're trying to catch us unprepared, Walker told his gathered commanders during an emergency briefing. They've probably been monitoring our activities and decided we're becoming too organized. Are we ready? Asked Captain Foster. Walker surveyed the faces of his unlikely military leadership, civilian captains, retired officers, and academic experts. None of them were supposed to be here, fighting humanity's most important battle. All of them had stepped forward without hesitation. No, Walker admitted, but neither are they. They're expecting to face a conventional defense force using outdated military tactics. Instead, they'll be facing Project Patchwork. He activated the holographic display, showing the intricate, seemingly chaotic battle plan they had developed. Position your ships according to this scatter pattern. No formation, no predictable positioning. Each vessel has its own assignment and autonomous authority to act. As the commanders dispersed to their ships, Morgan approached Walker. The radiation pulse generators are installed, but we've only had time to test 12 of them. The rest are, well, theoretical. Walker managed a grim smile. The Meridians think we're flying junk. Let's show them what junk can do when it's in the hands of desperate, creative humans. As Morgan turned to leave, Walker added, and Alex, make sure that last surprise we discussed is ready. If all else fails, we'll need it. The scientist nodded solemnly. It'll be ready, though I hope we never have to use it. Later that night, as Earth's improvised fleet moved into its scattered positions, the Meridian Advance Scouts appeared at the edge of the solar system. Their transmission was brief and dismissive. Your week is not yet complete, but we grow impatient with your pathetic preparations. Prepare to be eliminated. Walker didn't respond. Instead, he gave a simple order to all ships. Activate Project Patchwork. Let them come to us. The first Meridian ships emerged from hyperspace in a dazzling display of light and energy, their hulls gleaming like polished obsidian against the backdrop of stars. Not the entire fleet, just 50 vessels, a mere fraction of their armada, sent forward as a demonstration of force. To the aliens, this small contingent was more than enough to handle Earth's defenses. They're deploying in standard conquest formation, Lieutenant Davis reported, studying the tactical display on the command deck of Walker's flagship, the retrofitted destroyer Dauntless *. Exactly as Colonel Parks predicted. Walker nodded grimly. The Meridians had conquered enough worlds to develop a routine, a methodical approach that had never failed them. They positioned their ships in a precise arrowhead pattern, spreading out to form a wide net designed to intercept any fleeing vessels. All ships maintain radio silence, Walker ordered. Let them think we're scrambling to organize a defense. Earth's fleet remained scattered across the solar system in what appeared to be random positions, some clustered near the moon, others hiding in the shadow of Mars, many drifting seemingly abandoned near the asteroid belt. To the Meridians, it must have looked like panic, like a disorganized mess of vessels without coherent leadership. Commander Vex's transmission came right on schedule. Admiral Walker, observe the first wave of your destruction. His voice carried the same mocking tone as before. Your fleet appears even less organized than I anticipated. Have your captains begun deserting already? Walker didn't respond. Instead, he watched the tactical display as the Meridian vessels moved deeper into the solar system, their sensors sweeping for human ships. Sir, they're approaching the first trigger point, Davis said quietly. Walker keyed his secure channel. Station Alpha, stand by. What the Meridians hadn't realized was that during the previous month, humans had been busy with more than just retrofitting ships. Throughout the solar system, they had positioned what appeared to be abandoned space stations, old orbital platforms, decommissioned satellites, and research outposts. Most had been scheduled for demolition years ago, but had never been removed due to budget constraints. Now those forgotten pieces of space junk were about to serve their final purpose. Station Alpha, execute, Walker ordered. Near Jupiter's orbit, a decrepit research station that had been studying the gas giant's storms for decades suddenly powered up. Before the Meridian scouts could react, the station's newly installed energy collectors, hastily constructed from salvaged solar panels, unleashed a focused pulse of radiation directly at the lead Meridian vessel. The pulse struck precisely as the alien ship shields entered their reset cycle. For 0.3 of a second, a small section of the shield disappeared. And through that gap, 20 modified mining drones shot forward like bullets. On the Meridian vessel, alarms would be sounding as the tiny machines buried themselves into the ship's hull, their diamond-tipped drills designed for asteroid mining, now chewing through the alien metal. Seconds later, the drones detonated their EMP charges. The Meridian ship didn't explode. It simply went dark, its systems completely fried from within. First blood to us, Davis whispered. But the Meridians adapted quickly. The remaining scout ships immediately changed formation, their weapons targeting the station that had launched the attack. It was obliterated in seconds. As expected, Walker noted calmly. Stations Beta through Echo, execute in sequence. Across the solar system, 4 more seemingly abandoned stations activated, each targeting a different Meridian vessel with the same radiation pulse. 2 more alien ships went dark before the Meridians recognized the threat and began evasive maneuvers. Commander Vex's voice crackled over the communication system, his translated words tight with rage. Primitive trickery. You hide behind space debris like cowards. Walker finally responded, his voice level. Not cowards, Commander. Just making use of what you call junk. The Meridian fleet regrouped quickly, changing tactics. They began systematically destroying every structure in the solar system that wasn't actively moving. Stations, satellites, even debris fields. Phase 1 complete, Walker announced to his scattered fleet. All ships, commence Phase 2. Mining Division, you're up. Near Mars, 30 converted mining vessels that had been powered down to avoid detection suddenly activated their engines. Instead of fleeing, they moved directly toward the Meridian scouts. They're being targeted, Davis reported as the Meridian weapons locked onto the approaching mining ships. They'll be destroyed before they get within range. That's what the Meridians think too, Walker replied. The mining ships made no evasive maneuvers as the alien weapons fire reached out toward them. But at the last possible moment, hundreds of small objects detached from the mining vessels. Escape pods, maintenance drones, and cargo containers, all retrofitted with small engines and the same radiation pulse generators. The swarm spread out, too numerous and too small for the Meridian weapons to target effectively. Many were destroyed, but enough survived to reach their targets. When they detonated, they didn't cause physical damage. Instead, they created dozens of small holes in the Meridian shields, just long enough for the second wave of mining drones to slip through. 4 more Meridian ships went dark. On the command deck of the Dauntless Asterisk, a cheer went up, quickly silenced by Walker's raised hand. This is just the beginning, he cautioned. They haven't deployed their main fleet yet. As if summoned by his words, space rippled as more Meridian ships began to arrive. Not 50 this time, but hundreds, including massive capital ships that dwarfed anything in Earth's fleet. They're calling in reinforcements sooner than we predicted, Morgan observed, entering the command deck with a data tablet. Our tactics are working better than expected. Or they're taking us more seriously than we thought, Walker countered. Status of the nuclear option. Ready, Morgan confirmed, though we'll only get one shot at it. The Meridian reinforcements immediately began a systematic attack pattern, destroying anything that registered on their sensors. The human casualties began to mount as ship after ship was targeted and destroyed. We've lost the Horizon Asterisk and the Venture Asterisk, Davis reported grimly. The mining vessel Pioneer Asterisk is critically damaged. Walker watched the tactical display as nearly 20 human ships were destroyed in rapid succession. All ships, execute emergency protocol. I repeat, execute emergency protocol. Throughout the solar system, Earth's vessels suddenly cut power, appearing to be disabled or destroyed. Only minimal life support systems remained active, leaving the ships drifting lifelessly among the genuine debris of battle. The Meridian attack faltered, their sensors no longer able to distinguish between destroyed ships and those playing dead. After several minutes of scanning, the alien fleet began to regroup. Commander Vex's transmission was filled with satisfaction. A clever tactic, Admiral, but ultimately futile. Your fleet is decimated. Your stations destroyed. What remains of your forces appears to have abandoned the fight. Walker allowed a small smile. An interesting assessment, Commander. Perhaps you'd like a closer look. On cue, the supposedly abandoned orbital platforms around Earth, defense stations that had been decommissioned decades ago, suddenly powered up. But instead of attacking, they simply activated powerful spotlights, illuminating hundreds of objects that had been hidden in Earth's shadow. Old satellites, decommissioned spacecraft, debris from previous space missions, all had been quietly towed into position during the past week, creating the impression of a massive debris field. What is this? Vex demanded. More junk. Not just junk, Walker replied. Trojan horses. At his command, the debris field came alive. What appeared to be broken solar panels unfolded to reveal focused radiation emitters. Derelict satellites oriented themselves toward the Meridian fleet, and at the center of it all, the pride of Earth's old space program, a massive, obsolete space telescope that had been replaced years ago, opened up to reveal something the Meridians couldn't possibly have anticipated. Target their command ship, Walker ordered. Fire when ready. The retrofitted telescope, its delicate instruments replaced with a cobbled-together energy weapon composed of parts from a dozen different technologies, fired a concentrated beam of radiation precisely calibrated to the frequency of the Meridian shield reset cycle. The beam struck the Meridian command ship just as its shields entered the vulnerable phase. For a brief moment, a large section of the shield simply vanished. Nuclear option. Deploy now. Walker commanded. From the shadow of the moon, a single missile launched, a modified nuclear warhead salvaged from one of Earth's ancient submarines, now aimed directly at the gap in the command ship shields. The explosion wasn't intended to destroy the massive Meridian vessel, just to deliver an electromagnetic pulse of unprecedented magnitude directly against its unshielded hull. The effect was immediate and devastating. Not just the command ship, but every Meridian vessel within 1,000 kilometers suddenly lost power, their advanced systems overwhelmed by the crude but effective pulse. Multiple Meridian ships disabled, Davis reported, his voice tight with disbelief. At least 30 vessels showing no power signatures. Walker allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before returning to his command mode. All ships, power up and resume attack pattern. Target the disabled vessels first. As Earth's junk fleet emerged from hiding and moved to engage, Commander Vex's final transmission of the day came through, his translator struggling to convey his mixture of rage and disbelief. This is not warfare as civilized species conduct it. This is humanity fighting for survival, Walker replied calmly. And we're just getting started. The Meridian fleet regrouped with mechanical precision, their remaining ships forming a protective sphere around the damaged command vessel. Emergency power systems had kicked in on most of the disabled ships, but their primary weapons and propulsion systems remained offline, a temporary victory for Earth, but far from decisive. They're adapting to our tactics, Davis observed, pointing to the tactical display where Meridian vessels were now emitting a fluctuating energy field. They've modified their shield frequencies. Our radiation pulses won't work the same way again. Walker had expected this. The Meridians hadn't conquered 12 worlds by being slow learners. Dr. Morgan, what's your assessment? The scientist studied the sensor readings with a frown. They're cycling their shield frequencies randomly now. No predictable pattern to exploit. He looked up at Walker. We need a new approach, and quickly. They're preparing for a counterattack. As if confirming Morgan's words, the Meridian fleet began to move, splitting into smaller battle groups. Their tactics had changed. No longer the arrogant, straightforward approach of an overwhelming force, but the cautious, methodical strategy of a military that now respected its opponent. All ships, this is Admiral Walker. The enemy is adapting. Implement contingency delta. Throughout the scattered human fleet, captains acknowledged the order. Contingency delta wasn't a refined military tactic. It was organized chaos, a plan designed by the video game strategists on Walker's Unconventional Warfare Committee. Each ship had memorized a unique set of seemingly random movements and attack patterns, creating an unpredictable defense that would be difficult to counter. On the bridge of the converted freighter Opportunity Captain Maria Bell read the order with a mixture of dread and determination. Her vessel had once transported grain between Earth and the Martian colonies. Now it carried 200 modified mining drones and a hastily installed weapons system, cobbled together from industrial cutting lasers. Helm, begin Delta sequence, she ordered. Engineering, prepare to deploy countermeasures on my mark. The Opportunity suddenly changed course, accelerating directly toward a group of 3 Meridian vessels. To the aliens, it must have appeared suicidal, a civilian ship charging toward military vessels many times its size and power, which was exactly what Bell wanted them to think. As the Meridian ships prepared to fire, Bell gave the order, deploy chaff. The Opportunity released its countermeasures, thousands of small metal fragments, each coated with a reflective material salvaged from the ship's original thermal shielding. The cloud expanded rapidly, creating a dazzling, confusing mess of radar reflections and sensor ghosts. The Meridian targeting systems faltered, unable to distinguish the ship from the chaff. Their weapons fire scattered harmlessly through the cloud of reflective debris. And behind that cloud, using it as cover, came 3 more human vessels, each executing its own unique attack pattern. Similar scenes play out across the battlefield as Earth's fleet implemented Contingency Delta. No 2 ships followed the same pattern, making it impossible for the Meridians to predict where attacks would come from or develop an effective counter-strategy. Back on the Dauntless Asterisk, Walker watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The Meridians excel at countering organized military tactics, he explained to his bridge crew. Their entire conquest strategy depends on it, but they've never faced a species that fights like this, without apparent coordination, each unit acting independently. It's working for now, Morgan cautioned, but they're still learning. And we're taking heavy losses. He was right. For every Meridian vessel disabled, 3 or 4 human ships were destroyed. Earth's fleet had started with nearly 500 vessels of various sizes and capabilities. Now, less than 300 remained operational. We need something more, Walker admitted. Dr. Morgan, what about Project Lazarus? Morgan's expression tightened. It's ready, but untested. We have no idea if it will work or just get a lot of good people killed. At this point, those people will be killed anyway if we don't try something drastic, Walker replied, his voice heavy with the weight of command. Begin deployment. Project Lazarus had been Morgan's most controversial idea, a strategy so unorthodox that even Walker had initially rejected it. Throughout the solar system, dozens of human ships that had been genuinely damaged or disabled in the early fighting had been quietly retrofitted by emergency repair teams. Their conventional weapons and engines were beyond repair, but that wasn't what Project Lazarus required. All Lazarus units, this is control. Morgan spoke into a secure channel. Initiate sequence on my mark. 3, 2, 1. Mark. Across the battlefield, apparently destroyed human vessels suddenly powered up minimal systems, not enough to move or fight conventionally, but enough to activate the cobbled-together devices that Morgan's team had installed in their ruined hulls. These weren't weapons in any traditional sense. They were modified industrial electromagnets, originally designed for moving heavy metal objects in space construction projects. Now they generated powerful magnetic fields directed at the nearest Meridian vessels. The aliens' advanced hull material, so resistant to conventional weapons, possessed one property that Morgan had discovered during his analysis. It was highly susceptible to powerful, oscillating magnetic fields. The effects weren't immediately catastrophic. No explosions or dramatic failures. Instead, the Meridian ships exposed to the fields began to experience subtler problems: navigation errors, weapon malfunctions, communication disruptions. It's working, Morgan reported, watching the sensor data. The magnetic fields are creating micro-disruptions in their systems, not enough to disable them completely, but enough to throw off their precision. Walker nodded. And precision is everything to the Meridians. For a military force that relied on perfect coordination and technological superiority, even small disruptions created cascading problems. Meridian vessels began to collide with each other as their navigation systems provided faulty data. Weapons fired at incorrect targets or failed to fire at all. Taking advantage of the confusion, Earth's remaining combat-capable ships pressed their attacks, focusing on already struggling Meridian vessels. On the Meridian command ship, which had partially recovered from the earlier EMP attack, Commander Vex was livid. His next transmission came through clearly, the anger in his voice transcending the translator's neutral tones. You fight without honor, without proper military discipline. This is not warfare. This is the desperate flailing of savages. Walker allowed himself a tight smile before responding. You're right, Commander. This isn't traditional warfare. It's survival, human style. You came expecting an easy conquest against an inferior opponent. Instead, You found out what happens when a species with nothing to lose gets creative. The battle continued for hours, a chaotic melee unlike anything in recorded military history. Human ships darted between Meridian vessels, deploying makeshift weapons and impromptu tactics. The Meridians struggled to counter strategies that followed no discernible pattern or military doctrine. But despite Earth's innovations, the tide was gradually turning. Human ships were being destroyed faster than they could disable Meridian vessels. Project Lazarus had bought time, but not victory. In the command center of the Dauntless Asterisk, Walker studied the tactical display with growing concern. "We need something more," he muttered, almost to himself. Something they couldn't possibly anticipate. Dr. Morgan, who had been working frantically at a console nearby, suddenly straightened. "I might have something. But it makes our previous plans look conservative by comparison." Walker didn't hesitate. "Tell me." Morgan pulled up a schematic on the main display, a hastily designed modification to the Dauntless Asterisk itself. "We've been targeting their shields and their systems, but what if we target their entire command structure instead?" "How?" Walker asked, studying the unusual design. "We convert the Dauntless Asterisk into essentially one massive EMP bomb," Morgan explained. "Not just the nuclear option we used earlier, something far more powerful. We channel all power, including life support, engineering systems, everything, into one massive pulse directed at their command ship." The implications were clear. "That would mean—" "Yes," Morgan cut in. "The Dauntless Asterisk wouldn't survive. Neither would anyone on board. But if it works, it would completely disable their command structure, their communication network. Their entire fleet would be in disarray." Walker studied the scientist's face. "You're volunteering to stay on board to make it work?" Morgan nodded. "I'm the only one who fully understands the modifications required. And at this point, Admiral, what choice do we have?" Around them, the tactical display showed more human ships being destroyed every minute. Earth's defensive line was collapsing despite their innovative tactics. "There's always a choice," Walker said quietly. "But sometimes none of them are good." He straightened, his decision made. "Begin the modifications. I'll order non-essential personnel to evacuate." Morgan nodded grimly and turned to implement what might be humanity's last desperate gambit against an enemy that had never expected to face a serious challenge from Earth's collection of space junk. The evacuation of the Dauntless Asterisk proceeded with grim efficiency. Escape pods launched in carefully timed intervals, each one following a different trajectory to avoid creating an obvious pattern for Meridian targeting systems. Walker watched them go from the command deck, now staffed by a skeleton crew of volunteers who understood they would not be leaving. "Last group is away, Admiral," Davis reported, his voice steady despite knowing what lay ahead. "Dr. Morgan reports the modifications are at 80% completion." Walker nodded, studying the tactical display. The battle had shifted again. The Meridians had adapted to Project Lazarus, adjusting their systems to compensate for the magnetic interference. They were now systematically destroying the disabled human vessels that had been repurposed as magnetic disruptors. "How much time do we need?" Walker asked, not taking his eyes from the display. 20 minutes minimum," Morgan replied, his hands working furiously as he rewired critical systems. "I'm rerouting the main reactor output through the communication array. It was never designed to handle this kind of power." Walker made a decision. "Lieutenant Davis, send to all remaining combat-capable ships. Operation Final Stand. Authorization Walker Alpha 7. Davis hesitated only briefly before transmitting the order. Operation Final Stand wasn't a conventional military tactic. It was a suicide mission for what remained of Earth's fleet. Every ship would launch a direct assault on the Meridian forces, drawing attention away from the Dauntless Asterisk while Morgan completed his work. Across the battlefield, the captains of Earth's remaining vessels received the order with solemn determination. They had known from the beginning that this might be a one-way mission. Now that possibility had become certainty. On the bridge of the Asterisk, Resilient Asterisk, Captain Foster addressed his crew. "You've all heard the order. Anyone who wishes to take the remaining escape pods has my permission." He paused, looking around at the faces of his crew, miners, engineers, and civilians who had volunteered to defend their planet. "No one will think less of you." Not a single crew member moved. Foster nodded, pride evident in his expression. "Helm, set course directly for the Meridian flagship. Weapons, prepare to fire everything we have. Engineering, divert all power to forward shields." Similar scenes played out on dozens of vessels throughout the solar system as Earth's makeshift fleet prepared for its final act of defiance. The Meridian command ship, still recovering from earlier damage, detected the sudden movement of the human fleet. Commander Vex, watching from his control center, misinterpreted the coordinated attack as desperation. "They commit to a final futile assault," he communicated to his fleet commanders. "Prepare to eliminate them once and for all. The human resistance ends today." The Meridian vessels formed a defensive perimeter around their command ship, their weapons charged and ready. They expected a direct frontal assault, a last, desperate charge from a defeated enemy. Instead, the human fleet split into dozens of smaller groups, each attacking from a different angle, targeting different ships with seemingly random patterns. Some charged directly at Meridian vessels, while others executed complex evasive maneuvers. A few appeared to retreat, only to circle back and attack from unexpected vectors. It was chaos by design, the culmination of Project Patchwork's unconventional warfare doctrine. Aboard the Dauntless Asterisk, Walker watched the battle unfold with a mixture of pride and sorrow. "Those ships won't last long," he observed quietly. "They don't need to," Morgan replied, not looking up from his work. "Just long enough." The first wave of human ships made contact with the Meridian defensive line. The Resilient Asterisk charged directly at a Meridian cruiser, firing its modified mining lasers at point-blank range. The weapons barely damaged the alien vessel, but the Resilient Asterisk didn't stop firing even as it collided with the larger ship. The impact breached both hulls, sending debris and bodies into the vacuum of space. Similar scenes of desperate courage played out across the battlefield. Human ships rammed Meridian vessels when their weapons failed. Crews detonated their own engines when they could get close enough to cause damage. It wasn't warfare in any conventional sense. It was sacrifice on a scale the Meridians had never encountered. 15 more minutes, Morgan announced, sweat beading on his forehead as he worked. Walker nodded, then turned to Davis. "Open a channel to Commander Vex." The lieutenant complied, and moments later, the alien commander's face appeared on the main screen. Even through the translator, his tone conveyed a mixture of frustration and grudging respect. "Your fleet dies with admirable courage, Admiral. But it dies nonetheless. You have lost." Walker kept his expression neutral. "Perhaps. But before this ends, I'm offering you one last chance to withdraw from our solar system." Vex made the clicking sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. "You offer us nothing. Your planet will be ours within hours. You might take Earth," Walker conceded, "but at what cost? How many more ships are you willing to lose? How will you explain to your superiors that conquering one supposedly primitive world cost you half your armada?" For the first time, uncertainty flickered across the alien commander's features. The Meridian Empire hadn't maintained its dominance by accepting Pyrrhic victories. Walker pressed his advantage. "Your mission was to add another obedient species to your empire. Instead, you found a species that would rather die than surrender. What value is a radioactive wasteland populated by the survivors of a species that will never stop fighting you?" Before Vex could respond, a junior officer interrupted, speaking urgently in the Meridian language. The commander's 3 eyes widened as he received the report. "Your ships are deliberately colliding with ours," Vex accused. "This is not warfare. This is madness. This is humanity," Walker replied simply. "And we're full of surprises." He cut the transmission and turned to Morgan. "Status. 5 more minutes. the scientist replied, his hands working with frantic precision. The power coupling is barely holding. Around them, the ship groaned as systems were pushed beyond their design limits. Lights flickered, and warning alarms blared from multiple stations. "We may not have 5 minutes," Davis warned, pointing to the tactical display. 3 Meridian destroyers had broken away from the main fleet and were approaching the Dauntless *. "They figured out what we're doing," Walker calculated rapidly. The Dauntless * had minimal weapons remaining, certainly not enough to fend off 3 Meridian warships. "How close do we need to be for maximum effect?" he asked Morgan. The scientist looked up from his work, understanding the implication. "Ideally within 10 kilometers of their command ship. But Admiral, the modifications aren't complete. If we activate now, will it work?" Walker interrupted. Morgan hesitated. "Maybe, probably, but I can't guarantee." "That's good enough," Walker decided. "Helm, set collision course with the Meridian command ship. Maximum speed." The officer at the helm acknowledged the order without hesitation. The Dauntless * surged forward, its engines straining as it accelerated directly toward the heart of the Meridian fleet. "All remaining power to engines and forward shields," Walker ordered. "We need to get close enough." The approaching Meridian destroyers opened fire, their energy weapons impacting against the Dauntless *'s weakened shields. The human vessel shuddered but maintained its course. "Shields failing," Davis reported as another hit rocked the ship. "Hull breach on decks 3 through 5. Walker gripped the arms of his command chair. "Stay on course." The Meridian command ship grew larger on the view screen as the Dauntless * approached. It was massive, easily 20 times the size of the human vessel. Its weapons were already targeting the approaching threat. 1 minute to impact, the helm officer announced. Morgan looked up from his console. "The modifications are as complete as they're going to get. Ready to initiate on your command." Walker nodded, then addressed the remaining crew. "It has been my honor to serve with each of you. What we do today will be remembered as long as humans exist to tell the story." He turned back to Morgan. "Ready when you are, Doctor." The scientist took a deep breath and positioned his hand over the activation control. "For Earth," he said simply, and pressed the button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, every system on the Dauntless * went dark simultaneously. The ship seemed to die, until a new kind of energy began to build, visible as crackling blue electricity that raced along the hull. The modified communication array, never designed to channel the energy of an entire starship, began to glow white-hot. The power built exponentially, creating an electromagnetic pulse of unprecedented magnitude. Directed straight at the approaching Meridian command ship, the pulse struck just as the Dauntless * began to break apart under the strain of its own weapon. It passed through the Meridian shields as if they weren't there, not exploiting a weakness, but simply overwhelming them with raw power. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The Meridian command ship went completely dark, its systems fried beyond recovery. But the pulse didn't stop there. It cascaded outward, catching dozens of nearby Meridian vessels in its expanding sphere of influence. One by one, the pride of the Meridian fleet went silent, disabled by a weapon born of human desperation and ingenuity. The Dauntless * itself didn't survive to witness its success. The tremendous energy release tore the ship apart, its fragments scattering among the disabled Meridian vessels. Throughout the solar system, both human and Meridian crews watched in awe as nearly a third of the alien fleet suddenly went dark. For several minutes, an eerie silence fell across all communication channels. Then, from the few surviving human vessels, a transmission went out to the remaining Meridian ships. It came from Captain Maria Bell of the Opportunity *, now the highest-ranking officer left in Earth's Defense Force. "Meridian Fleet, this is Acting Commander Bell of Earth Defense. Your command ship is destroyed. Your fleet is in disarray. We offer you this choice. Withdraw from our solar system immediately, or we will activate more weapons like the one you just witnessed. The next pulse is already being prepared. You have 10 minutes to begin retreat." It was a bluff. Earth had no more super weapons to deploy. But the Meridians had no way to know that. All they knew was that a supposedly primitive species had just destroyed their command ship and disabled a significant portion of their fleet using technology they couldn't understand or counter. After 9 tense minutes, the remaining Meridian ships began to move. Not toward Earth, but away. First a few, then dozens, then the entire remaining fleet. Within an hour, long-range sensors confirmed that the Meridian Armada was leaving the solar system. 3 days later, a single Meridian vessel returned. Not a warship, but a diplomatic craft. It carried a message from the Meridian Empire. Earth would be classified as a high-risk, restricted engagement world. In diplomatic terms, it meant the Meridians had decided Earth wasn't worth the cost of conquering. In the aftermath, as humanity began to rebuild its defenses, the story of Admiral Walker, Dr. Morgan, and the junk fleet that saved Earth spread throughout the planet. Monuments were built using pieces of the salvaged ships that had fought so valiantly. Schools taught children about Project Patchwork and the unconventional thinking that had turned apparent weakness into strength. And in space, Earth began construction of a new defense fleet, one that incorporated both advanced technology and the lessons learned from necessity. The new ships didn't hide their improvised nature. They celebrated it, proudly displaying their patchwork design as a reminder that humans would always find a way to survive, no matter the odds. The Meridians and other spacefaring species learned an important lesson. Never underestimate a species willing to turn junk into weapons and disadvantage into opportunity. Earth might not have the most advanced fleet in the galaxy, but as the Meridians discovered at tremendous cost, sometimes the most dangerous opponent isn't the one with the best technology. It's the one with nothing to lose and the creativity to make the impossible possible. Captain Jack Reed stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force destroyer Resilient, his face hard as stone. Through the main view screen, he watched the blue glow of Neptune grow smaller as his ship retreated. Behind the planet, bright flashes lit up the darkness of space. Each flash meant another human ship was gone. "Captain, the Solarian warships have broken through the Neptune defense line," said Lieutenant Mike Green, his voice shaking. "All EDF ships in Sector 7 are. They're gone, sir." Reed's hands tightened on the railing. 6 months. That's all it had taken for the mighty Solarian Empire to push humanity back to the edge of their own solar system. 6 months of watching good ships and better people die fighting an enemy with technology far beyond their own. "Status report," Reed ordered, keeping his voice steady for the crew. "Not good, sir," said Green, looking down at his console. "The Dauntless and Protector are still fighting, but their shields are failing. The rest of the fleet is." He shook his head. Reed closed his eyes for a moment. The Neptune defense line had been their last real chance to stop the Solarian advance. With it broken, Earth lay exposed. Message from Fleet Command. "Sir," called out Communications Officer Lisa Jones. "All remaining ships are ordered to fall back to Earth orbit. They're saying this is our final stand." Reed looked around the bridge. His crew was tired, faces marked by too many battles and too little sleep. But they were still ready to fight, still ready to die for Earth if needed. "Set course for Earth," he ordered. "Maximum speed." The war room inside Earth Defense Headquarters was silent as the holographic display showed the approaching Solarian fleet. President Anna Wilson stood with her hands clasped behind her back, her face showing none of the fear she felt inside. "How many ships do we have left?" she asked. Admiral Frank Johnson, Supreme Commander of Earth's military, looked up from his datapad. 47 combat-ready vessels, Madam President, against their 300. Someone whispered a curse. Wilson ignored it. "And our planetary defenses. Operating at 60% capacity, the orbital platforms took heavy damage in the last attack." Wilson nodded slowly. 6 months ago, Humanity had been expanding peacefully through their solar system, establishing colonies on Mars and mining operations in the asteroid belt. Then the Solarian Empire had arrived with their massive ships and energy weapons that cut through Earth's best defenses like they were paper. "Admiral Tom Davis has requested to speak with you, Madam President," said an aide. "He says it's urgent." Wilson nodded, and Davis' face appeared on a nearby screen. His uniform was dirty, and a bandage covered one side of his face. "Madam President," he said, bowing his head slightly, "I need authorization to enact Protocol Omega." The room went silent. Protocol Omega was the last resort contingency plan, designed for a scenario they had hoped would never come. Wilson hesitated only briefly. "Authorization granted, Admiral. May God be with you." Davis nodded grimly. "And with all of us." The screen went dark. Wilson turned back to the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, we need to discuss terms of surrender." Reed stood on the bridge of the Resilient as they entered Earth orbit. The planet looked peaceful from space, blue and white and perfect. You couldn't see the cities damaged by Solarian strikes. You couldn't see the people living in fear. "Captain," said Jones, "incoming transmission from the Solarian flagship. It's Admiral Grant himself." Reed straightened his uniform. On screen, the image of a tall, silver-skinned being appeared. Admiral Grant of the Solarian Empire looked almost human, except for his metallic skin and eyes that glowed with an inner light. "Captain Reed," said Grant, his voice smooth and emotionless, "I have just finished discussing terms with your President Wilson. Earth has surrendered. You will power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded." Reed's face burned with anger and shame. "And if we refuse?" Grant's expression didn't change. "Then I will target major population centers on your planet. I believe I would start with the city you call London. There are 11 million humans there, correct?" Reed felt the eyes of his crew on him. He thought about fighting, about going down in a blaze of glory. But what would that accomplish except the deaths of millions of innocents? "We will comply," he said through gritted teeth. Grant nodded. "A wise decision. The Solarian Empire now claims this system and all its resources. Your people will be allowed to live under our guidance. Resistance will not be tolerated." The screen went dark. "Orders, sir?" asked Green quietly. Reed took a deep breath. "Power down weapons. Prepare to be boarded." 2 weeks later, Reed stood in a crowd of Earth military officers, watching as President Wilson signed the formal surrender document. The ceremony was being broadcast across Earth and throughout the Solarian Empire. Admiral Grant stood nearby, looking pleased in his cold, alien way. "With this signing," Grant announced, "the human race officially becomes part of the Solarian Empire. Your military forces are disbanded. Your ships now belong to us. You will find that life under Solarian rule can be comfortable so long as you obey." Reed noticed something strange. Admiral Davis was not present. None of the officers from the carrier Defiance were there. As if reading his thoughts, Grant spoke again. "We are aware that one of your vessels, the carrier Defiance, fled during the final battle. Let me assure you, this ship will be found and destroyed. Such futile gestures of defiance will not be tolerated." After the ceremony, Reed found himself alone with President Wilson for a brief moment. "Is it true," he whispered, "about the Defiance?" Wilson's eyes darted around before she leaned closer. "Protocol Omega is in effect," she whispered back. "Admiral Davis is doing exactly what he's supposed to do." Before Reed could ask more, Solarian guards approached, and Wilson was escorted away. That night, as Reed looked up at the stars from his apartment window, he thought about Protocol Omega. Most officers believed it was just a last-ditch evacuation plan, a way to save a handful of important people if Earth fell. But Reed had once heard rumors that it was something more, something that might give humanity a second chance, even if the worst happened. For the first time since the Neptune defense line fell, Reed felt a tiny spark of hope. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of Solarian sensors, Admiral Davis and the Defiance were carrying that hope with them. 3 years passed under Solarian rule. Earth had changed. Tall, silver buildings now stood in major cities. Solarian ships filled the skies. Humans worked under the watchful eyes of their new masters. Jack Reed wiped sweat from his forehead as he tightened a bolt on the engine of a Solarian patrol ship. His old captain's uniform was gone, replaced by gray work clothes with a number stamped on the chest. 47,291. Just another human worker in the Mars shipyard. Finish up. 47,291. Inspection in 10 minutes, said a Solarian overseer, his metallic skin gleaming under the harsh lights. Yes, sir, Reed replied, keeping his eyes down. He had learned that looking a Solarian in the eye could earn you a day without food. As soon as the overseer walked away, Reed quickly placed a tiny device inside the engine housing. It looked like a normal part, but it was actually a scanner that would record the ship's communication frequencies. Another small victory for the Resistance. Later that night, Reed entered his small living pod. These tiny rooms housed most workers at the shipyard. Once inside, he locked the door and moved his bed to reveal a small hole in the floor. From it, he pulled out an old-style radio. "Sparrow to Nest," he whispered into it. "Package delivered. Over." The radio crackled. "Nest to Sparrow. Good work. Any news on the big move?" "Over." Reed frowned. "They're speeding up the schedule. First transports leave in 2 weeks, not 4. "Over." "Understood. Stay safe. Nest out." Reed hid the radio again and sat on his bed, thinking about the big move. The Solarians had announced they would relocate millions of humans to mining colonies on distant planets. Officially, it was called an opportunity. In reality, it was a death sentence of hard labor in terrible conditions. Time was running out. On Earth, former President Anna Wilson sat in her office in the Human Governance Center. The Solarians had kept her as a figurehead, a puppet leader who signed their orders and told humans to obey. Most people thought she had given up, sold out to save herself. They were wrong. Wilson looked up as her Solarian assistant entered. "Governor Wilson, Admiral Grant wishes to see you." Wilson nodded and followed the assistant to a large meeting room. Admiral Grant stood by the window, looking out at what had once been Washington, D.C. "Governor Wilson," he said without turning, "the first relocation ships are ready. I want you to make a speech encouraging humans to embrace this new opportunity." Wilson kept her face blank. "Of course, Admiral. I've already prepared some remarks." "Good. The relocations are essential to the Empire. We need workers for the new mining operations." Grant finally turned to look at her. "There have been whispers of resistance. People saying they will fight the relocations. You will tell them such actions are futile." "I will make that very clear," Wilson said. After Grant left, Wilson returned to her office and pressed a hidden button under her desk. A small section of wall slid open. Inside the hidden space was a young woman with short brown hair. "Did you hear?" Wilson asked. The woman nodded. 2 weeks until the first ships leave. We need to move faster. Can you get a message to Davis?" "Yes. Our next cargo ship leaves tomorrow, with the usual supplies for the Solarian outpost on Europa. The message will be hidden inside." Wilson handed her a small data chip. "Tell him we can't wait any longer. Whatever he's planning, it needs to happen now." Far beyond the edges of the solar system, hidden in the dust clouds of a small, unnamed nebula, Admiral Tom Davis stood on the bridge of the carrier Defiance. But the ship no longer looked like a human vessel. Its hull had been rebuilt and expanded over the past 3 years. And it wasn't alone. Through the view screen, Davis could see dozens of ships of various sizes. Some were clearly built from pieces of old Earth vessels. Others were entirely new designs. All of them were being worked on by teams of engineers and technicians. "Admiral," said Commander Bill Taylor, approaching with a datapad. Latest production numbers from the asteroid facilities. We've completed 15 more fighters and 2 cruisers this month. Davis nodded, taking the pad. And the new weapon systems. The EMP cannons are installed on all major ships. The drone swarms are at 90% capacity. Taylor lowered his voice. The gravity well generators are still giving us problems, but Dr. Miller thinks she's close to a breakthrough. Davis walked to a large holographic map showing the Solarian Empire. Red dots marked major military bases. Blue lines showed patrol routes, all information gathered piece by piece through the Resistance network. And our people inside the system? Davis asked. Still in place. We just got a message from Earth. Wilson says the Solarians are starting their relocations in 2 weeks. Davis's face hardened. Then we have 2 weeks to be ready. He turned to face Taylor. Send the alert to all our hidden bases. It's time to bring the ships together. Back at the Mars shipyard, Reed was finishing his shift when alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. Solarian guards began running toward the landing pads. What's happening? Reed asked another worker. Don't know, the man replied, but they look scared. A moment later, a Solarian patrol ship landed urgently. Officers rushed out, shouting orders. Reed moved closer, pretending to clean a nearby engine part while listening. Attacked 3 outposts in the Kuiper Belt. One officer was saying, no survivors, no warning. Impossible, said another. Who would dare attack the Empire? Unknown ships. No identification signals. They hit hard and vanished. Reed felt his heart beat faster. Could it be? After 3 long years. That night, the Resistance radio network was buzzing with rumors. Reed listened intently. Nest to all birds. Confirmation of strikes against Solarian outposts. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Protocol Omega is active. Reed closed his eyes, feeling a mix of hope and fear. Protocol Omega, the last resort plan that few knew about. Before the war, when Earth first detected signs of the approaching Solarian fleet, Admiral Davis had proposed a radical contingency plan. If Earth fell, they would need a way to fight back. Secret shipyards were built in distant asteroid belts. Key scientists and engineers were quietly given secondary assignments. Resources were hidden away. Even most of Earth's military hadn't known about it. It was too important to risk the information leaking. And now, those hidden resources were finally being used. Reed looked out his small window at the red Martian sky, where Solarian ships were scrambling in obvious confusion. They thought they won, he whispered to himself. They never even looked for our hidden fleet. His communicator beeped with an encrypted message. Get ready. Extraction in 48 hours. The Resistance was about to become a revolution. Move now, Reed whispered urgently. He and 4 other Resistance members ran across the dark landing pad. Above them, the red Martian sky was filled with stars and the occasional flash of a Solarian patrol ship. Their target sat 50 meters away, a small Solarian scout ship. Guards change in 3 minutes, said Jane Miller, a former Earth Defense Force pilot. We need to be inside by then. Reed nodded. The plan was simple but dangerous. Steal a Solarian ship and escape the solar system to find Admiral Davis and the hidden fleet. If they failed, they would face public execution. They reached the ship and Reed quickly placed his hand on the security panel. The device strapped to his wrist bypassed the Solarian security system, a gift from the Resistance's tech experts who had been studying Solarian technology for years. The door slid open. We're in. Move. The small team rushed inside the ship. Jane immediately went to the pilot's seat while Reed and the others secured the entry points. I need 2 minutes to override the startup sequence, Jane said, her fingers flying over the alien controls. Keep watch. Reed looked through a small viewport. On the other side of the landing pad, 2 Solarian guards were talking. They hadn't noticed anything yet. Hurry, he urged. Almost there. Got it, Jane said. The ship hummed to life. Just then, one of the guards looked their way. His eyes widened, and he reached for his weapon. They'd spotted us. Take off now, Reed shouted. The ship lurched upward as Jane fired the engines at full power. Alarm sirens began to blare across the shipyard. Hang on, Jane called as she pushed the engines beyond safe limits. The small scout ship shot upward through the Martian atmosphere. Patrol ships launching, said Mark, another team member, watching the sensors. 4 of them, coming fast. Reed strapped himself into the co-pilot's seat. Can we outrun them? Jane's face was tight with concentration. Not in atmosphere, but once we hit space, I can activate the jump drive. The ship shook as energy blasts from the patrol ships passed close by. One grazed their hull, making the lights flicker. Target the ship's engines, but do not destroy it, came a Solarian voice over the communication system. The humans must be captured alive. Not happening, Jane muttered. The ship broke through Mars' atmosphere into open space, charging jump drive. Need 30 seconds. A blast hit their rear section, sending sparks flying from a control panel. Hull breach in aft section, Mark reported. Sealing now. 10 seconds to jump, Jane said. Another hit rocked the ship. 5 seconds. Reed could see the Solarian ships closing in through the view screen. Jump now. The stars stretched into lines as the ship leaked into faster-than-light travel. The Solarian ships vanished behind them. For 2 weeks, they traveled in stolen ship, making short jumps between systems to avoid detection. Their destination was a set of coordinates Reed had memorized years ago during a secret briefing about Protocol Omega. Jump complete, Jane announced as they arrived in an unnamed star system far from Earth. This is the place, but I don't see anything. Reed looked at the empty space around them. According to his information, this should be the location of Sanctuary, the main base of the hidden fleet. Maybe we're too late, Mark suggested. Maybe they've already left. Reed shook his head. No, they're here. He opened a communication channel and transmitted a specific sequence of tones, the Protocol Omega recognition signal. For a long minute, nothing happened. Then suddenly, their sensors lit up with warnings. Multiple ships decloaking all around us, Jane exclaimed. Reed smiled as the space around them seemed to shimmer. Where there had been nothing, now dozens of ships appeared. Some he recognized as modified Earth vessels. Others were new designs he had never seen before. A communication request flashed on their console. Reed accepted it. Admiral Davis's face appeared on the screen. He looked older, with more gray in his hair and new lines on his face, but his eyes were still sharp and determined. Captain Reed, he said with a small smile. Took you long enough to join us. Welcome to Sanctuary, Admiral Davis said as he led Reed and his team through a massive space station hidden inside a dense nebula cloud. Reed stared in amazement. The station was huge, with docking bays holding ships of all sizes. Thousands of people worked throughout the facility, building, repairing, and preparing for war. How? Reed asked. How did you create all this in just 3 years? Davis gestured around them. Protocol Omega wasn't just a plan. It was already in motion before the Solarians arrived. We had small outposts and manufacturing facilities hidden throughout neighboring star systems. When Earth fell, we activated everything and started building. They entered a large command center where a holographic map showed the entire Solarian Empire. This is what we're up against, Davis said. The Solarian Empire controls over 300 star systems. They have thousands of ships and millions of soldiers. Reed felt a moment of doubt. And how many ships do we have? Davis smiled grimly. 342 combat vessels, plus support ships. Not as many as them, but we have advantages they don't expect. He pointed to a different display showing unusual ship designs. Our scientists have been studying Solarian technology. We've created weapons specifically designed to target their weaknesses. EMP weapons that can shut down their electronic systems, drone swarms that can overwhelm their defenses, and our newest creation, gravity well generators that can trap their ships and prevent them from jumping to light speed. Reed looked at the displayed weapons with growing hope. The Solarians think humans are primitive, Davis continued. They believe we're only good as slaves. They never bothered to hide their technology from us because they thought we couldn't understand it. That was their biggest mistake. He turned to face Reed directly. The time has come to show them exactly what humans can do when pushed too far. I'm putting you in command of the destroyer Vengeance. It's one of our newest ships. Reed straightened his back. What's the plan, Admiral? First, we start hitting their outposts and supply lines. Make them chase shadows. Then, when they're confused and spread thin, we strike at their main fleet. Davis's eyes hardened. The Solarians thought they won 3 years ago. It's time to show them how wrong they were. 2 days later, Reed stood on the bridge of the Vengeance. The ship was smaller than traditional destroyers, but packed with new weapons and technology. His crew was a mix of original Earth Defense Force personnel and new recruits trained at Sanctuary. Through the view screen, Reed could see hundreds of ships gathering. The hidden fleet was coming together for the first time, preparing to launch their full-scale counterattack. All systems ready, Captain, reported his first officer. Reed nodded, feeling the surge of determination. The storm is gathering, he said quietly, and the Solarians have no idea what's coming for them. Enemy outpost in range, Captain, reported Jane Miller, now serving as weapons officer on the Vengeance. Reed nodded, studying the Solarian supply station on his display. The station orbited a small moon in a system far from Earth, but it was important. From here, the Solarians distributed resources to a dozen of their frontier worlds. All ships, attack pattern Delta, Reed ordered. Remember, hit hard and fast. We need to be gone before reinforcements arrive. This was the 5th raid his battle group had conducted in the past week. Admiral Davis had split the human fleet into small, fast-moving groups that struck Solarian targets across the Empire and disappeared before the enemy could respond. Target locked, Jane said. EMP missiles ready. Fire. The Vengeance shuddered slightly as it launched 4 missiles toward the Solarian station. The other 5 ships in Reed's group fired as well. The missiles streaked across space, their warheads designed to overload Solarian electronic systems without destroying the station itself. On the view screen, Reed watched the missiles hit. There was no explosion, just a pulse of blue energy that washed over the station. Immediately, the station's lights flickered and went out. Direct hit, Jane reported. Their systems are down. Reed turned to his communications officer. Send the message. The officer nodded and transmitted a short video message to the station. In it, Admiral Davis stood in his uniform, speaking directly to the camera. Attention, Solarian Empire. Your rule is coming to an end. Humanity will not remain enslaved. This is only the beginning. Message sent, Captain. All ships, prepare to jump to the next target, Reed ordered. The small battle group vanished into light speed, leaving behind a disabled station and very confused Solarians. On the Solarian homeworld, Admiral Grant stood before the Imperial Council, his normally confident posture now stiff with tension. Explain these attacks, demanded the Solarian Emperor, his silver skin gleaming in the council chamber's light. Grant bowed. We believe it is a small group of human rebels, Your Majesty. They have attacked 27 outposts and supply stations in the past 2 weeks. A small group, the Emperor asked, his voice dangerously calm. How has a small group managed to disable 27 Imperial facilities? They appear to have developed weapons that specifically target our systems, Grant admitted. And they never stay to fight. They strike and vanish immediately. Another council member leaned forward. And what of this human admiral who appears in their messages? Davis, I believe. Grant's face hardened. Admiral Davis commanded the human carrier that escaped during the conquest of Earth. We believed his ship was destroyed or lost in deep space. It seems we were mistaken. The Emperor stood, towering over the council table. Find these rebels. Crush them. Make an example of them that the entire galaxy will remember. Grant bowed again. As you command, Your Majesty. I have already recalled our main battle fleet to secure the core systems. As Grant left the council chamber, he tried to hide his worry. These were not the actions of a desperate band of refugees. The attacks were too well coordinated, too effective. Something larger was happening, something he had missed. Back on Earth, former President Wilson sat in her office, reading reports of the attacks with carefully hidden satisfaction. The Solarians were growing nervous. Security had tightened everywhere. The time had come. Wilson pressed a hidden button under her desk, sending a prearranged signal to resistance cells across Earth and its colonies. Within hours, small acts of sabotage began. Power stations failed. Communication networks went down. Solarian patrols found their vehicles suddenly inoperable. Nothing big enough to trigger a massive response, but enough to stretch the Solarians thin, to make them look in all the wrong places. Reed stood in Admiral Davis's command center aboard Sanctuary Station. On the main screen, a map showed the position of the Solarian main battle fleet. They're doing exactly what we hoped, Davis said. Grant has pulled their fleet back to protect their core systems. Reed studied the map. That leaves Earth vulnerable. Davis nodded. And that's where we'll strike next. He gestured to the assembled ship captains. The time for small raids is over. We're launching our main attack. He pointed to Jupiter on the map. The Solarians have established their main Earth defense base on Callisto, Jupiter's outermost large moon. If we take it, we control access to Earth. This is where we reveal our full strength. The room filled with determined voices as Davis outlined the attack plan. When he finished, Reed approached him privately. Admiral, permission to lead the Special Operation Team, Reed requested. Davis looked at him carefully. That's the most dangerous part of the mission. You'll have to get inside the Solarian Command Center and disable their early warning network. I know their systems better than anyone, Reed said. I spent 3 years working on their ships. After a moment, Davis nodded. Very well, Captain. The Vengeance will take you in. 3 days later, Reed's ship approached Jupiter using a stolen Solarian identification code. Around him, the human fleet waited in hiding, using the newly developed cloaking technology reverse-engineered from Solarian systems. We're being hailed, reported his communications officer. Reed took a deep breath. Put them through. A Solarian face appeared on screen. Identify your vessel and purpose. Supply ship Radiant, delivering parts to Callisto base, Reed replied, using the cover story they had prepared. There was a pause while the Solarian checked something. Your ship is not on our expected arrival list. Reed forced a casual tone. Check again. We were rerouted from Europa Station yesterday. Admiral Grant's orders. The mention of Grant's name worked. The Solarian looked flustered. One moment. Yes, I see the order now. Proceed to docking bay 4. The screen went dark, and Reed let out a breath. It worked. The Vengeance, disguised as a Solarian supply ship, continued toward Callisto. All Special Operation Team members, prepare for deployment, Reed ordered as he rose from his command chair. We have 30 minutes to get inside and disable their warning network. Jane looked up from her station. Good luck, Captain. Reed nodded. When the network goes down, that's Davis's signal to bring in the fleet. Let's hope the Solarians enjoy surprises. Reed and his team of 6 moved quietly through the Solarian base on Callisto. Their stolen uniforms and forged identification got them past most checkpoints, but time was running short. The main control room is ahead, whispered Mark, checking the stolen map. Heavy security. Reed peered around a corner. 2 Solarian guards stood at the entrance to the control room. We need a distraction, he said. As if in answer to his words, alarms suddenly blared throughout the base. Unauthorized chips detected in Sector 7, announced a voice over the station speakers. The guards at the control room door looked at each other, then hurried away toward the disturbance. "That's our diversion team right on schedule," Reed said with a smile. "Move now." They rushed to the control room door. Reed used his security bypass device to get them inside. The room was large, filled with Solarian officers monitoring screens showing space around Jupiter. Before anyone could react, Reed's team fired stun weapons, dropping the Solarians where they stood. "Secure the door," Reed ordered as he moved to the main control panel. "I need 2 minutes." He worked quickly, using the knowledge he had gained during his years working in the Solarian shipyard. His fingers flew over the alien controls, shutting down one system after another. "Warning network disabled," he announced finally, sending the signal to Davis. On the screens around them, small dots began to appear as the human fleet decloaked. Dozens at first, then hundreds. A Solarian officer who was regaining consciousness looked at the screens in disbelief. "Impossible," he whispered. "Where did they come from?" Reed smiled as he watched the human ships move into attack formation. "We were here all along," he said. "You just never bothered to look." The space around Jupiter erupted in battle. Hundreds of human ships faced off against the surprised Solarian defenders. Energy beams cut through the darkness of space. Explosions bloomed like silent, deadly flowers. Reed and his team fought their way back to the Vengeance, which waited at a maintenance dock. Alarms blared throughout the Callisto base as Solarians realized they were under a full-scale attack. "Get us out of here," Reed ordered as he reached the bridge. "Join the main attack force." The Vengeance broke away from the base, engines flaring. Through the view screen, Reed could see the massive battle unfolding. Human ships moved in perfect coordination, using tactics that confused the Solarians. "Admiral Davis is hailing all ships," Jane reported from her station. Davis's face appeared on the screen. The surprise worked. "Their early warning system is down, and they can't call for reinforcements. Now we press the advantage. All ships, execute Battle Plan Omega." The human fleet split into 3 groups. One continued to engage the Solarian ships near Callisto. Another moved to secure the other Jovian moons. The third, led by Admiral Davis in the Defiance, pushed toward Earth. Reed's ship joined Davis's group. As they moved away from Jupiter, Reed could see the new human weapons in action. Swarms of small, unmanned drones surrounded Solarian cruisers, overwhelming their defenses. EMP weapons shut down Solarian systems, leaving ships drifting and helpless. Most impressive were the gravity well generators. When activated, they created distortions in space that prevented Solarian ships from jumping to light speed, trapping them in normal space where they could be engaged. "They never expected us to have this technology," Reed said, watching a Solarian battleship struggle against a gravity well. "They thought we were too primitive." "Their mistake," Jane replied with a grim smile. A massive explosion lit up space behind them as one of the main Solarian defense platforms fell. "Captain," called his communications officer. "Incoming transmission from Earth. It's President Wilson." Wilson's face appeared on screen. She looked tired but determined. "Captain Reed, the resistance has begun. We've taken control of major communication centers in Asia and North America. The Solarians are in chaos." "We'll be there soon, Madam President," Reed promised. "Hold on." Admiral Grant stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Imperial Might, as it orbited Earth. His silver face showed rare emotion, anger, and disbelief. "How did they build such a fleet without our knowledge?" he demanded of his officers. "How did they develop these weapons?" No one had answers. Reports flooded in from all over the solar system. Human ships attacking everywhere. Resistance fighters rising up on Earth and Mars. Solarian forces in disarray. "Admiral," said his second-in-command, "the main human fleet has broken through our Jupiter defenses. They will reach Earth within hours." Grant's eyes narrowed. "Prepare all ships. We will meet them and crush them, and order orbital bombardment of major Earth cities. Show these humans the cost of rebellion. His officer hesitated. Sir, that would kill millions, including our own personnel. Do it, Grant shouted. I will not lose this system. In orbit around Earth, massive Solarian warships began to move into bombardment positions. On the ground, humans watched the sky in fear, seeing the ships through breaks in the clouds. Then new ships appeared, human ships, emerging from lightspeed jumps. The Defiance led the fleet, with the Vengeance and dozens of other warships following close behind. All ships, protect Earth, Admiral Davis ordered. Stop those bombardment vessels at all costs. The space around Earth became a battlefield. Human and Solarian ships clashed in the largest space battle humanity had ever seen. On the Vengeance, Reed watched as a Solarian ship targeted London. Target their main weapons, he ordered. Fire everything we have. The Vengeance unleashed a barrage of missiles and energy weapons. The Solarian ship's shields flickered, then failed. A follow-up shot disabled its weapons. All across Earth's orbit, similar scenes played out. Human ships fought with desperate courage, knowing everything was at stake. On the ground, President Wilson led a team of resistance fighters into the main Solarian control center in what had once been New York. After a brief firefight, they secured the facility. Cut off their communication with the fleet, Wilson ordered, and get me a channel to all Earth broadcasting systems. Minutes later, her face appeared on screens worldwide. People of Earth, this is President Wilson. Today we fight for our freedom. The hidden fleet has returned, and we are taking back our world. Rise up. The time is now. Across the planet, millions of humans answered the call. They overwhelmed Solarian positions through sheer numbers. The occupiers, cut off from orbital support and surrounded by hostile populations, began to surrender. In space, Admiral Grant's flagship, the Imperial Might, was the largest vessel in the battle. Its weapons tore through several human ships, threatening to turn the tide. We need to take out Grant's ship, Admiral Davis said over the fleet communication. It's the key to their command structure. Reed looked at his tactical display. The Vengeance is in position. We can make a run at it. Too risky, Davis replied. Their firepower will tear you apart. We have to try, Reed insisted. We'll use the gravity well generator to trap them, then hit them with everything we have. After a moment, Davis nodded. Do it. We'll provide covering fire. The Vengeance broke from the main formation, diving toward Grant's massive flagship. Solarian weapons fire streaked past them, some hitting and shaking the ship violently. Gravity well generator at full power, Jane reported. Ready on your mark. Activate, Reed ordered. Space distorted around the Solarian flagship. The massive ship suddenly slowed, caught in the artificial gravity well. They're trapped, Reed said. All weapons, fire. The Vengeance unleashed everything it had, joined by several other human ships. The Solarian flagship's shields began to fail under the assault. On the bridge of the Imperial Might, Admiral Grant watched in disbelief as his ship's systems failed one by one. Impossible, he whispered. They were primitives. How could they do this? An explosion rocked the ship, throwing him to the floor. Warning lights flashed everywhere. Admiral, called his second-in-command, we've lost engines and weapons. Life support is failing. Grant stood slowly, straightening his uniform. Prepare my shuttle. Reed watched as a small shuttle launched from the crippled Solarian flagship. It's Grant, he said, recognizing the shuttle's signature. He's running. Should we pursue? Jane asked. Reed considered for a moment, then shook his head. No, let him go. Let him tell the Solarians what happened here today. Around them, the battle was ending. With Grant's flagship disabled and Earth's surface largely in human hands, Solarian forces began to retreat or surrender. Admiral Davis's voice came over the fleet channel. All ships, stand down from combat operations. The Earth is secure. I repeat, Earth is secure. Cheers erupted across the bridge of the Vengeance. Reed looked out at his home planet, now free after 3 long years. 1 month later, Reed stood in the rebuilt United Nations building in New York. President Wilson addressed the delegates from Earth and its colonies. "Today we offer peace to the Solarian Empire," she said, "not as subjects, but as equals. The war has proven that humanity will not be conquered. We ask only for our independence and the right to determine our own future." The Solarian representative, not Grant but a lower-ranking diplomat, looked uncomfortable. "The Empire is willing to discuss terms." Reed smiled slightly. The Solarians' carefully constructed image of invincibility had been shattered. Their defeat at Earth had sent shockwaves through their empire. Already, reports indicated that other subjugated species were beginning to resist. As the meeting continued, Reed slipped outside to a balcony overlooking the city. Admiral Davis joined him there. "Thinking about what's next?" Davis asked. Reed nodded, looking up at the stars. "There are other worlds out there under Solarian control. Other people who need help." Davis smiled. "I was thinking the same thing. The Vengeance is being refitted. She'll be ready in a week, interested in a new mission." Reed extended his hand. "Always, Admiral." As they shook hands, Reed knew that this was just the beginning. Humanity had faced extinction and survived. They had built a hidden fleet and won their freedom. Now they would help others do the same. The Empire thought it had won. They never saw the hidden fleet coming, and they would never make that mistake again.